Tap. My name is Frankie, and this is my co-host,
Stan the Man.
We are excited to talk to you about Modern Horizons 3 right before this weekend. But before we do, Stan, how does it feel to be officially old?
Yeah, I'm 30 now, guys. Just turned the big 30 on May 26th. It was a good day. Got to see my mom. Got to make some food, mole, rice, chicken, etc. We made some enchiladas. So much fun. And then we actually learned some of her recipes so we can make them at home. So last night, Winter and I made some of my mom's recipes, which was kind of fun. And now I'm old, so as you can see, I need more exercise, and I'm holding my my mic because the arm just will not work on this side of the table, and I don't want to break anything. So get used to that, but I'm sure you won't notice after a while. With that being said, though, how was your vacation to New York?
It was really great. I mean, we were able to see 3 shows. The beginning of it was kind of rough because we got delayed 5 hours.
Oh,
so we had to
yeah.
miss the show on the first day. And then
That's so sad too.
The train that we were supposed to take was 6 miles from the airport. And so I was like, look, at this point, like, let's get a taxi. We'll take it all the way to New Jersey. And convenience wise, that was amazing. But like, it was like a $200 taxi. Like
And they didn't comp you at all for the flight delay or nothing?
No. Oh, yeah, dude. I got a whole $100.
Man, that's crazy.
Thank you, Spirit. There's nothing to eat.
I honestly hate airlines so much. Not to get in a long-winded discussion, but I've never experienced the delays, but I see it happen to people all the time. It's like, how is that even legal? Like, I don't understand it at all. Oh yeah, we overbooked, so get off the airline or we're gonna beat your ass. And like, what?
Yeah, they were like, oh, we're so sorry, but the plane needed repair. And I'm like, then
repair my nuts.
Get a new plane? It took you 4 hours to like, there's no other planes available. Like, okay, Spirit, whatever, man.
Yeah, and Spirit's like the worst one, but I've even seen like the high-end ones, like American Airlines and all them. They had the whole controversy. I think it was Delta Airlines, maybe. I don't know. All these airlines are just the worst, and it just makes flying such a terrible experience when it should be extremely convenient.
Yeah, but besides that, we saw 3 shows. We had a good time. We had a lot of great food places we went to, a brunch place, tacos, Italian. Like, it was just a blast. But now I'm exhausted. I mean, we were up at 4:45 this morning to try and get to the airport for our boarding time was at 7:50 a.m.
Yeah.
And if you've ever been in New York, like, there's traffic all the time. It's not like LA bad, but it's bad. And so it took us, it's like 30 miles. We're 30 miles from the airport. And it took us, with an extra 30 minutes of traffic, about an hour and a half to get to the airport. 30 miles.
That's crazy.
Yeah. And that was good. That was like, wow, we really only had 30 minutes of traffic. Like,
the taxi guy's like, I've never got here that fast.
Yeah.
That's crazy, though. I'm glad you had a good time. But yeah, with that being said, Frank just got back home, and we're recording the podcast Monday after he just got back today. So we're going to try to go fast. With that being said, there's so much we could talk about with Modern Horizons. Honestly, we could talk for like 4 or 5 hours if we really wanted to get into the nitty gritty of every single card. I put a bunch of bullet points next to most of the cards that I thought were really cool just to bring up. We want to give you guys as much detail as possible without like taking up too much time. And also at the end, we're going to try to give you like a brief synopsis of what Frank thinks the limited format might look like for those that are doing pre-release this weekend at Borsat Gaming. With that being said, though, we're going to jump into a bit of housekeeping. As always, the easiest way to support us, if you want to support, is joining our Patreon. There's a bunch of perks. You can get coaching sessions from us. We can do deck techs with you. We can help you out with your sideboard guides for tournaments, coaching sessions, or even just tournament practice where we're prepping you for an event that you're expecting certain matchups for, etc. Or maybe you're not feeling confident against a certain deck. We're happy to test it out against you as well. And other perks as well if you join our Discord. But for those that want to join our Discord, it's open access. You can always reach out to us there. We are very active in it, and all of our community members are very active in talking about their tournaments, their prep, what kind of technology is getting added to the formats, etc. And if you want to reach out to us on Twitter, you can always follow us there. On Twitter, we try to stay as active as possible just to stay engaged with the community. see what new happenings are going on. But obviously, Twitter's not everybody's favorite platform, so we don't use it as much as we could. In the future, that might change. But if you want to really, really support us, right now we're looking for subscribers on YouTube. If you're watching us right now on YouTube and you haven't subscribed already, please scroll down, just check if you are. Like, comment, subscribe. It really does help us out, and we're trying to get to 500 subscribers on YouTube just so we can get to monetization.
And
that
with your support, Stan won't have to hold his mic any longer.
Yeah, exactly. I can get an arm stand that we can afford. But honestly, though, we really do want to get YouTube monetization because our goal is to keep the show free forever. The Patreons are just a way to get additional support and extra perks. But the show itself, we want to keep free forever. With that all being said, let's keep it short and sweet and jump into the episode. If you want to get Modern Horizons 3 products, though, shout out to Boarhead Gaming. Todd does free editing for the episodes every week, and we have to throw it back. If you are looking for Modern Horizons 3 products, please try to order from our website. If you have questions about it, call in store. I'll definitely help you out. Anyways, I figured for Modern Horizons, the easiest way to start would be with the Eldrazi Titans. One, because I don't think they're going to be that good in Modern. Well, maybe one of them will be, but two, they're cool. They're really, really cool. I mean, we all kind of simp for Emrakul a little bit. And at the end of the day, people want to hear about this, whether or not you're casual or not. And Commander players are going to love these cards no matter what. And unbanned Emrakul, so it'll be pretty cool. We'll start with the first one, which is Emrakul, The World Anew. And Frank's going to be reading off these cards for you because he has that radio voice.
Emrakul, The World Anew. Legendary creature Eldrazi, 12 mana. When you cast the spell, gain control of all creatures target player controls. Flying, protection from spells and from permanents that were cast this turn. When Emrakul, The World Anew, leaves the battlefield, sacrifice all creatures you control. It also has Madness, pay 6 colorless mana. It's a 12/12.
Yeah, Emrakul is pretty interesting. This is actually the only one I think that could get played in Modern, only because of that Madness. Obviously, 6 colorless is kind of hard, but if you kind of figure out a way to make a colorless deck work, the only like archetype that really stands out to me is I used to play on Arena back when Historic was more popular and there was less alchemy, ruining the game, ruining the game for me. I hate alchemy. Anyways, there was a deck that was playing like Forsaken Monument, and it would play a bunch of like Mind Stones, and there was like a Gargoyles that was like also a 2-mana rock, but it came in tapped. It could become a creature. All your lands were colorless lands, so Forsaken Monument basically made all your lands Ancient Tombs, and it was a colorless deck. So you would combo off with Karn by searching your sideboard for like Aetherflux Reservoir. You could grab Paradox Engine, and the main combo was using Witch's Oven to pitch Metalwork Colossus and cast it infinite times for infinite damage with Aetherflux Marble, which is a really cool deck. But otherwise, you could just play like, oh, I have a bunch of mana, I'm going to ramp into like whatever giant Eldrazi, you know?
Yeah.
And because it was playing Witch's Oven specifically, I could see like Emrakul really slotting into that kind of deck. And theoretically, if Mindstone ever came to Pioneer, you could probably make that Explorer deck work in that format as well, with Forsaken Monument specifically. So that could be kind of cute. But obviously, Emrakul, she's going straight to Modern. So seeing the power level difference, I don't know if there's going to be a deck that wants to use this that can facilitate the discard and then have 6 colorless pips, unless there's just going to be like some other way to use it. I don't know if you have any thoughts on the card, but that's kind of just like all I have to say about her.
Yeah, no, I don't have much to say about Emrakul. It feels like the protection from spells and permanents that were cast this turn is kind of cool.
Very cool.
It doesn't feel like any of the abilities is like the other Emrakuls feel like when they hit, the game ends.
Yeah.
And this doesn't have anything in it for me that's like, oh, this is game ending.
Yeah.
When this comes to the battlefield. And so for that reason, I'm like,
and for that reason, I'm out. Honestly, I only slightly disagree because one, her protection ability. So Emrakul, the Promised End, has protection from instants, I believe. And then the original Emrakul is like protection from all colors, but it was colored spells. And so the problem was with those cards is that Leyline Binding and Solitude doesn't work against this one, but it kills the other ones no problem. And those cards are like premier removal spells.
sure.
So that's like why this one is worded that way. And I do like the way her word, like her protection spell is worded. Like this turn you Leyline Binding, this turn it no work.
But doesn't that mean like the next turn, like they could just Solitude it? Like on their turn, they could Solitude?
It says protection from spells and permanents that were cast this turn.
This turn.
So if Solitude comes in this turn, its trigger goes on the stack this turn.
Right. No, I'm saying I cast Emrakul.
Yeah.
Go back to your turn. Doesn't that mean that they can then Solitude because it wasn't the turn that Emrakul was cast on?
I believe it references the removal spell, not herself.
Got it.
Does that make sense? I think so. Like your Leyline Binding was cast this turn. That ETB stack goes on the check this turn. That's how I'm reading it. I could be wrong, actually. If you guys want to let us know in the comments, I could be wrong. But the way I'm reading it is,
Judge Kai,
you just cast this Leyline Binding. That trigger won't work on me this turn. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So there are obviously ways to kill her, like field nukes and whatnot. But stealing all the creatures is kind of cool too. It'll definitely get played in Commander. And then the fact that you don't give them back when she dies is kind of big. It's like sacrifice them, get rid of these guys. Nobody has them.
Yeah.
It's like this is like peak spoiled child. I want everything, and it's like you have to share. Blow up, like just nuke it. But anyways, I think we talked too much about Emrakul anyway. We're gonna get to the next one, which is Kozilek, the Broken Reality. First of all, the names on these guys, peak. Very good.
Fire. Kozilek, the Broken Reality. 9 mana, legendary Eldrazi creature. When you cast a spell, up to 2 target players each manifest 2 cards from their hands. For each card manifested this way, you draw a card, manifest a card, put it onto the battlefield face down as a 2/2 creature. Turn it face up at any time for its mana cost if it's a creature card. Other colorless creatures you control get +3/+2, and Kozilek is a 9/9.
I feel like manifesting was the most boring ability you could have gave Kozilek. At least it still draws cards, but like, man, I'm not gonna lie, this one sucks. Like this one is just bad. I'm not playing this at all, ever in Modern, ever. It maybe gets cute in Commander with like the Manifest Morph decks, I suppose. Colorless creatures getting buffed is really cool with morphs. I guess you could just play her in a colorless deck to boon all of your colorless creatures. But I don't know. Kozilek, this card for sure is like the least interesting Kozilek of the 3. To be fair, the other 2 are pretty cool already, so I guess it didn't have to be cool. I just wish I saw what their plan was for this card.
Yeah, I feel like I wish if this card could have been playable, it would come in for exactly lethal damage. Like it would hit for 20 on the next turn. But it makes 2 bodies that are then 5/4s, and you could hit in for a total of 19.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, almost lethal.
It's like, well, you're gonna fetch, right?
Yeah, like I don't know.
I get it for sure.
Limited making, playing a 9/9 that also makes 2 5/4s. That sounds sweet.
Yeah, also the fact that you can prep for your manifest, like it's going to happen. So if you manifest a creature that you know is going to want to flip and get good value from it, that could also have high impact in Limited.
Yeah, you will lose the +3/+2, but you still get that.
That's true, yeah. And your guys will be bigger than their guys, so I would just say draw 4. With that being said, the next one of the Eldrazi Titans is Ulamog the Defiler.
Ulamog the Defiler. 10 mana, legendary Eldrazi creature. When you cast a spell, target opponent exiles half of their library rounded up. Ward, sacrifice 2 permanents. Ulamog the Defiler enters the battlefield with a number of 1/1 counters on it equal to the greatest mana value among cards in exile. Ulamog has Annihilator X, where X is the number of 1/1 counters on it, and Ulamog is a 7/7.
Card is really cool, actually. I think this card is sweet. Flavor wise, all over, it's like it feels scary. It's definitely going to be a sweet commander card. I just don't think it's good enough for Modern, because when I'm thinking of Tron and the Ceaseless Hunger and the fact that I get to pop any 2 problem cards right out the gate, and that's on the cast trigger, so like I'm at least getting that even if you counter my Ulamog. It is nice that the flavor is there with like, oh, we're exiling their library. Ulamog's always kind of been doing that, and I don't hate it, but the cast trigger is so non-impactful for Modern, it feels like. And I mean, maybe in the sideboard, I guess. The ward is cool. Sacrifice 2 permanents, like that's pretty scary. And the fact that it gives itself such a huge annihilator, like that's going to feel really scary to play against in Commander. But I just can't see myself doing this in Modern unless I have a way to give it haste. If I don't have like a Concordant Crossroads in play or something, it's like this guy's coming in and annihilating you for like, oh, I don't know, I exiled a Karn, so it's Annihilator 7. You know what I mean? So I don't know. It feels like this card's almost there, but you kind of have to cast it to get value from its Annihilator ability, unless you like already have some guys in exiles from maybe like evoking. I don't know. It seems like a hard card to use, and I'm not right now seeing the vision for it in Modern, and it definitely doesn't slot into Tron, which that's kind of like where I would want to put it right away, you know?
Yeah, the only place that I'd be like, oh my gosh, this card is great for Mill, but
Sure.
you're never getting to 10 mana,
Yeah.
and there's no way to like turbo, like, could this be better than Tasha's? Sometimes. Yeah, it's half their deck,
Yeah.
but there's not a way that I could see for them to play this. So
Right.
I agree with you that like the Ward Sacrifice 2 permanents isn't as good as like what other decks are doing.
Yeah, and because I left it off the list, we'll just bring up Ugin's Labyrinth, I believe, the new Ancient Tomb land that we got. I meant to put it down later on the list, but I ended up skipping it because I posted it past the Eldrazi Titans. This card is really sweet. So players didn't get anything from the Eldrazi Titans, maybe, unless Emrakul finds a way to like make herself discardable in Tron, which is oven, you know, something. Ugin's Labyrinth is actually really sick. This one for sure I can see getting played. Eldrazi Tron for sure, but definitely I think actual Tron can also make use of this. And then Frank will read the card off for us.
Ugin's Labyrinth. Land. It has imprint. When Ugin's Labyrinth enters the battlefield, you may exile a colorless card with mana value 7 or greater from your hand. Add 1 colorless. If a card is exiled with Ugin's Labyrinth, add 2 colorless instead. And then you can return the exiled card to its owner's hand just by tapping it.
Yeah, the fact that it has that second ability where you can return the card to your hand is so nasty. I feel like it doesn't have to have that, but I guess it makes the card like that much scarier because you get the card back. Now I kind of want to play 4 copies. Now I'm not afraid of imprinting on this. I'm going to get my card back. If you play it in a Tron shell or Eldrazi Tron, which would be even better, early game you're getting all this mana. Maybe you don't have the card in your hand now, but when you're ready for it, then you just get it back to your hand whenever you want at instant speed. There is something to be said about people like destroying your land and then you losing the spell that way. But assuming you never tap it for no reason, just willy-nilly, and you're using the mana effectively and then holding it up as much as possible so they can't just like kill it, you can in response return your card to your hand. There's like definitely ways to play around it. And once you have Tron, you have so much mana, so like losing the Ancient Tomb land doesn't really matter. And the fact that it's not like it sacrifices itself. It's just like, oh, take your card back. So I'll just do it on your end step and then I'll have Tron and it'll be fine. It's just kind of scary. And the fact that now you can like Chalice on 1 in these Eldrazi Tron shells, it's gonna be a really good card in my opinion.
Chalice on 1. That sounds so scary.
Yeah, Chalice on 1, turn 1 though. Like the gimmick before was like, I can Chalice on 1 you, but it's going to be on turn 2 because we're not playing Legacy. And now you can just Ugin's Labyrinth and it kind of already fits that shell anyway. And one other thing to be said about hiding your cards under the land is now they can't be griefed or thought seized. So that's kind of nice too, because grief did get a little bit of a power up with we'll talk about it later, but Phyrexian Tower is now in the format and that's kind of nice. So yeah, being able to hide your cards from Thoughtseize is another cool thing, because Tron is a deck that kind of already mulligans really hard. And when you do that, Thoughtseize is one of the hardest ways to punish you. And if you're like, well, I can at least hide my Karn or my whatever under here for later and then see what I can get to.
Yeah.
I think this card is very cool.
Yeah, I think that's really sweet. And that's actually one of the reasons why I love the plot mechanic is because against, in Pioneer, against hand hate decks like mono black control, you can be like, oh, I'm plotting this Pillage the Bog and now you can't touch it. I will get like a pseudo tutor later. When
I'm ready, this is going to happen. I'm going to find an answer.
Yeah. And,
very cool.
And the same thing is happening with Ugin's Labyrinth. I like that a lot.
Agreed. The next card we're going to get into is Grist Voracious Larva, also known as when it flips, Grist to Plague Swarm. Kind of cool to see a new version of Grist coming up from the woodworks because it kind of fits in the same archetypes as the other Grist. Frank's going to go ahead and read it off for you guys, though.
Grist Voracious Larva. 1 green, legendary creature insect. Death Touch. Whenever Grist Voracious Larva or another creature enters the battlefield under your control, if it entered from the graveyard or you cast it from the graveyard, you may pay 1 green. If you do, exile Grist, then return to the battlefield transformed under its owner's control. To Grist the Plague Swarm. Legendary Planeswalker. +1, create a 1/1 black and green insect creature token, then mill 2 cards. Put a Death Touch counter on the token if a black card was milled this way. -2, destroy target artifact or enchantment. -6, for each creature card in your graveyard, create a token that's a copy of it, except it's a 1/1 black and green insect, and it starts at 3 loyalty.
Yeah, I'm kind of really excited to see this card get played. I think it kind of slots into Yawgmoth pretty easily because the persist creatures already trigger its abilities just naturally for it to flip over. Now you kind of have this incidental artifact enchantment hate in your main board. The card itself isn't that bad. It's fueling your graveyard plan. It's ultimate if you ever get to it. It's also an alternate win condition, which is really nice. And it's just like a 1-mana Death Toucher, which 1 power Death Touchers in general, I'm pretty like a pretty big fan of, just because they can always kind of like hold the fort. Like, oh, I'm never attacking into that guy. I don't want to trade for nothing. But I can see like this guy blocks Ragavan so nicely. And if you're like, oh, I didn't get to flip him, but I got your Ragavan or your DRC if you couldn't flip it or whatever. That's so nice. And there's going to be a lot more aggro and lower to the ground decks, in my opinion, coming up in Modern now that like there's a lot of support for elves, a lot of support for goblins, a lot of support for merfolk especially, and a lot of aggro too. Like I think Death Shadow got a little bit of support too, and this guy is like a really good blocker for these early turn plays where like he trades with Tarmogoyf, he trades with Nethergoyf, he trades with Death Shadow. Just a really cool guy. And if you ever get to flip him, you're like getting just free value. I don't really hate it.
Well, and on top of it, I don't think that there's like a lot of decks where you're like, oh, I have a plan immediately for artifact and enchantment hate.
Yeah.
And like this will incidentally be really value if you're playing into like an Asmo deck, or like this Grist that has other techs can be like, oh, I'm going to nix your Urza Saga.
Yeah.
Like
that's huge, actually.
That's disgusting.
Also, it kind of actually works with the Asmo food decks. If they want to play green, Oval Chase Daredevil comes back to your hand.
Right.
Boom, you're flipping it. Like,
yep.
That is so cool. There's so many ways for this card to get played already in current archetypes that are very strong. I think this card is very cool. In my opinion, I know you said the thing about what Spike said with Sorin. This is my favorite of the 1-mana, well, I guess not 1-mana, of the creatures that flip into Planeswalker cycle. This one is my favorite. I think it's the strongest out the gate. I could be wrong. I know the Sorin is really popular for a lot of people, but I'll let you get to the Sorin next because we should talk about that one since we brought it up.
Yeah, and the only other thing I'll say with this is I've seen like Mengu and a couple people on Twitter. I actually can't believe I've been seeing as much Modern and I actually have the ability to talk about it because you know how I feel about Modern, everyone. But I've been seeing like these green-black mid-range lists where it's like centered around Grist and Liliana, and I'm like, oh, and here's another potential thing that they can do. So I think that that's sweet. But getting to Sorin House of Markov, 1 and a black legendary creature, human noble, lifelink, extort. At the beginning of your post-combat main phase, if you gained 3 or more life this turn, exile Sorin of House Markov, man, that's so awkward to say. Then return him to the battlefield, transform under his owner's control. Sorin Ravenous Neonate. Legendary Planeswalker also has extort. +2 is create a food token. -1, Sorin Ravenous Neonate deals damage equal to the amount of life you've gained this turn to any target. -6, gain control of target creature. It becomes a vampire in addition to its other types. Put a lifelink counter on it if you control a white permanent other than that creature or Sorin, and it starts at 3 loyalty. I don't know. I just think that us having a 1/4/2 drop, that's a really thick body that will also, right, if we're moving in a direction of aggro, this is really great. Plus, if you find a way to start like extorting and gaining tons of life, immediately Soren becomes like a ridiculous threat. Like you go, okay, first turn, tick up. Then I have the ability to crack food, extort, pretty much shoot anything that's on the battlefield.
Yeah.
And then beyond that, if like, say you're grinding a really hard game and you're playing against like creativity or something, and you have the ability to like nab an Archon, nab an Atraxa, like just be like, okay, your best creature is mine now.
Yeah. I definitely think this card is very strong. I know I'm not as high on it as like maybe Spike is, but I think this card is going places for sure. If you flip it over, it's like Oko at home, but Oko at home is still probably one of the strongest planeswalkers in the format.
Right. I like that though. Oko at home.
Yeah.
Soren is Oko at home.
It literally is though. Like if you flip this guy over, +2 food, 5 loyalty out the gate, like, and it's +2 get the food. So getting to the ultimate -6, it's only 3 turns, and you're gonna keep him, assuming they don't interact, and you can theoretically keep him alive in an Orzhov shell where you're like having a ton of removal, etc. Or maybe you're even griefing with it. I mean, so now you can like take their hate spells for it out of their hand already. And the Extor is actually really nice, I think, because Keurig is also a card we're going to be talking about later. I think Extor is a terrific mechanic to use with Keurig. And in general, Extor is also a way to trigger his ability. Maybe you cast a spell with Extor and then you get to use his minus ability because you ran out of food or whatever. But the fact that he makes his own food for his minus removal spell, removal ability rather, this card is very good. I'm not quite as high on it only because I can see visions for the Grist card where I can already put him in like 2 or 3 archetypes and I'm really happy. This guy I think is more build around, but if you do build around it, the reward is there.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I think this is a card where like people will have to cook with it, and if they can cook and they find something that really works, it's going to be like, this card's amazing.
Right. And it is a terrific body, like you said. It blocks Ragavan phenomenally. If you ever give it like flying counters or whatever with like that Guide to Souls card as well, like it's even more insane. And Guide to Souls might be a card that you want to play with it because of the life gain to help it flip over. There's just so many ways to make this card work. And I think people will sleep on it. But later on, we'll talk about how like Soul Sisters and Martyr Proc also got a lot of cool cards. And those are really insane life gain decks anyway. So if you're telling me, oh, a life gain deck Matters is going to be good in Modern, I would be pretty excited. I love life gain Matters. I know there was like so many memes we used to make where like mono white in Standard during like 2019, 2020, the people on Reddit would be just complaining like, oh, I'm tired of these 4/4 angels. This guy's making them for free, blah, blah, blah. You know what I mean? Like I love those kind of decks. And that would be really sweet to see with Soren.
Yeah. And then I can go up to Wisconsin and win off of sudden death rules.
True, man. That's
the reason to play this card.
No, lifelink beats sudden death.
Yeah.
Easy game. With that being said, the next card is I tried to get all the cards that are callbacks into the list for the script. And if we don't get through all the cards, guys, I promise we'll post it on the Patreon somewhere so you can read them all later, our show notes. But the next card is really cool. It's Necro Dominance. This is a callback to Necropotence. And it's definitely a fixed version of it. Frank's going to get into reading it, and I'll explain why it's better. Well, not better, but fixed.
Necrodominance, triple black, legendary enchantment. Skip your draw step. At the beginning of your end step, you may pay any amount of life. If you do, draw that many cards. Your maximum hand size is 5. If a card or token would be put into your graveyard from anywhere, exile it instead.
So if you already know what Necropotence does, which you should if you play Commander, and you should if you played Magic back in the day because it was one of the strongest enchantments for a reason, Mono Black loves Necropotence. The card is so powerful. So the differences between this and actual Necropotence is, 1, Necropotence doesn't have the restriction of hand size. You just get to draw a bunch of cards. 2, Necropotence is not legendary, so you could stack them if you really needed to like either empty your hand out, or sometimes you'd play a second copy if you didn't have anything else to do to well, one, you could increase your devotion now, but back in the day, it was to protect your necropotence. Like, well, if they get rid of one, they can't get rid of two. There's no force of vigors back in the day. But and then also one thing I like about it is that this one is actually a trigger on end step, where normally necropotence gives you the ability to pay a life and add a delayed trigger, where on end step, for every life you paid to that trigger, each individual one would give you one card. So then you could like go, I'll pay 8 life, but you'd get 8 instances of that. So like, it's not like your opponent could stifle all of them. They could only do one. This one will get affected by cards like Tashana's Tidebinder and Stifle, etc. Well, not Stifle in Modern, but Tashana's Tidebinder and other Stifle effects will matter for Modern with this, because if you do counter it, you counter the entire ability. They're not going to get any cards, and now they're skipping their draw step, which is a big deal. However, in return, the player doesn't have to pay the life up front, because the trigger says when this trigger, choose a life amount. The way I'm reading it, it's gotta, in order for them to pay the life, you would have already had to let them resolve the ability. So then they could choose X life, and then they're just gonna get that many cards. So if you counter it, they're not gonna lose life, but they're gonna lose a ton of draw power, and that's really a big deal. So it's definitely a way more fixed version, but I think this card could get played. Definitely Cabal Coffers decks might abuse it. I could even see like a mono black shell with Keurig being in the format now. There could just be like a mono black spells are good deck. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's a very cool card, and I'm really excited to have it in the format. Do you have any thoughts on it before I get to the next one?
No.
The next card is another call. Actually, no, it's not a callback. This is Recruiter of the Guard, originally from Conspiracy. This card made its home in Death and Taxes almost immediately when it came out. It's a very cool card. It's kind of a callback to the red version, Imperial Recruiter. So this one was white, so obviously it was way better for Death and Taxes, being a mono white deck for Legacy, and it is a very powerful card. I'll let Frank read it off for you guys.
Recruiter of the Guard. 2 and a white, creature, human soldier. When Recruiter of the Guard enters the battlefield, you may search your library for a creature card with toughness 2 or less, reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle. It's a 1/1.
So yeah, obviously it's just a tutor, but the fact that it tutors for specifically cards that you're going to be building around anyway, this kind of card was already phenomenal in Legacy. I could see Death and Taxes actually being a thing in Modern again because of cards like this being around. And it's also really good in a future deck we're going to be talking about later, but there's a Nalurin now in Modern, and this card kind of helps you tutor for your combo pieces, like Guidus Holes, etc. So I think Recruiter the card is going to find a home in Modern very, very easily, and it's going to be cool to see what decks start using it and for what. Any thoughts before I move on?
No.
So we got Nethergoyf up next. This one is a callback to Tarmogoyf, obviously, for those that used to play Modern in the Boomer days. And it's really cool because this one is actually black, and black is a better color for this kind of card nowadays, ironically enough, especially because you can use it in Death's Shadow. And this card is cool to me because Necrogoyf from, I think, Modern Horizons 1, the 3-mana ugly Tarmogoyf, terrible card. This is like literally what that card wanted to be when they were like cooking the designs up. The Necrogoyf is this card at home. Nethergoyf, though, very good card, and I think it's easily going to find a home in some Death Shadow decks. Frank's going to read the card off for you guys so you know what it does.
I was going to say, let me read it. Nethergoyf, 1 black, creature, Lorgoyf. Nethergoyf's power is equal to the number of card types among cards in your graveyard, and its toughness is equal to that number +1. It has escape 3 and a black, and
2 and a black.
2 and a black, thank you. And its power toughness is star toughness, star +1.
Yeah, so the escape cost is interesting because it's escape delirium, where you have to exile 4 different cards of different types. So it hurts its own power, and it hurts your delirium if you play it in a delirium deck. But with that being said, the other notable thing is that it's your graveyard for its ability. So even though it's a 1-mana Tarmogoyf, it's not strictly better because Tarmogoyf sees both graveyards. This guy only sees your own. However, I still think that in the Death Shadow pile, or maybe some other Rakdos aggro, Ragavan, Dragon Rage Channeler with Delirium, Nethergoyf, that kind of shell I think could be really powerful as a base for this kind of deck. And then if you just have like a bunch of 1-mana, 2-mana guys that are just super powerful, or even all 1-drops, DRC, Ragavan, Nethergoyf, Death Shadow. All of a sudden, you're playing like Teamer Battle Rage like back in the day. And I think this kind of deck could be really strong. And the fact that you can escape it, if you have like a huge graveyard late game, this is a really grindy card. So you might actually be able to go, well, exile creature, land, artifact, and then I still have Delirium, or I still have like 5 or 6 types in my graveyard. So it's not a big deal. I'm really high on this card. I think it's a really cool card. I'm also excited because Jund style decks just like aren't playable right now. It'd be cool to see more of that kind of resurgence. I really miss Death Shadow decks. I really miss Jundy rock decks, and this kind of card really helps them out. Any thoughts before I move on?
No thoughts outside of like I'm just excited for Nethergoyf for the reasons that you said. I started like thinking about Modern and playtesting Modern during the Tarmogoyf era.
Yeah.
And I see like the posts on the internet about being like, I used to be the most powerful card in Modern. And it's like someone being like, all right, Tarmogoyf, time to go back to bed.
Yeah.
Like, you know,
come on,
like,
Grandpa.
Yeah, like he's in an old folks home. And that like makes me really sad because I really liked cards like Tarmogoyf and wish that they were playable.
Yeah.
And so seeing this is like, we're bringing it back. There's hope, baby.
there definitely is hope for sure. What's it called? With that being said, the next card, I'm not sure if this is going to be super good, but I'm hoping it'll be playable. Eladamri Porvictol, I believe is the name.
You don't ask me.
Your turn to try.
I don't know. Eladamri Corvictol. 1 green, legendary creature, elf, warrior. You may look at the top card of your library anytime. You may cast creature spells from the top of your library. Green, tap 2 untapped creatures you control. Reveal a card from your hand or top card of your library. If you reveal a creature card this way, put it onto the battlefield. Activate only during your turn. It's a 3/3.
So, a couple reasons why I'm high in this card. One, I'm a simp for elves. I used to play elves in Legacy all the time. I really like the deck in Modern, but it was just never past tier 2. Matt Bailey, if you're watching, you and I we're always cooking up these elves decks, and we're always like, how can we make it playable? I know now Matt, he switched to Asmo Food because he's like, well, I want to play like a creature combo deck, but a good one, you know. And Legacy Elves hasn't been playable for a while. It's just sad, but this is the kind of card I think that could actually give it a home in Modern again, where we were playing Realm Walker before. Realm Walker says, I'm a shapeshifter, choose a creature type. You can play the cards off the top of your deck. This one doesn't have that restriction. You can play with any creatures off the top of your deck. In addition to that, the fact that it's an elf is going to add up to your like elf count, which is going to matter too, especially when we talk about Priest of Titania later. And the ability it has to like pay a green and just tap 2 creatures, that is a really cheap way to get a Craterhoof directly into play for your Elves finisher or any other creature you decide to like cheat into play with that guy. Elves is going to have a way to like use this guy to abuse creatures into play, and the fact that you can actually steal it off the top of your deck too is kind of cool. So if you go like really wide with your Elves, you're like, cool, tap 2 of my weaker guys, activate this ability. Do you have a Stifle? No, here's a Craterhoof, blow you out. I'm really excited to see that kind of Elves deck make a resurgence, and that's kind of like the only reason I'm excited about it. If it doesn't make Elves playable, then there's nothing really else to be said. But with that being said, we're going to jump into the Flayer cycle. Before Frank reads these off, because we're going to go through them one by one, I'll say this. I think all of these actually seem pretty good out the gate, at least borderline, like minimum playable. Top end, some of these are very strong. And it's interesting because when the Evoke creature cycle came out for the free cards, everybody slept on subtlety. Subtlety, like at spoiler season, people were like, oh, what does this card do? It only hits creatures and planeswalkers? This is so bad. And like a month later, it was like, oh, wow, get that card. That card is so freaking good. But all the rest of them, we were like Fury, Solitude, Endurance, and Grief. We were like, wow. Obviously, Fury got banned. Grief is still phenomenal. Solitude is a great card forever. Gets played in Legacy. And Endurance just does what Endurance does, which is arguably the fairest one, but it is super strong in the fair way. And they all kind of like did their thing, even where Subtlety like at first wasn't like that like impressive. The first cycle, the Forces, 2 of them were arguably like unplayable, and then one of them is like medium at best in Convoke, which is Force of Virtue. Force of Rage, Force of Despair, like I don't think I've ever seen anybody play them, and I don't think I ever will see anybody play them. They're terrible. Obviously, Force of Negation is terrific, and then Force of Vigor, that one is my favorite, obviously, but Force of Vigor is such a nasty card. The fact that it hits 2 things, so good, and then Force of Negation, everybody knows what that card does. So the first cycle really, really whiffed. The second cycle could have been a whiff. Maybe you could argue it's a little bit too strong. I think this cycle is a really happy medium. All of them are playable, but not like over the top. Even Flare of Denial, I would say, is like not too crazy compared to Force of Negation. But the gimmick with these is that they're free if you sacrifice a non-token creature. So as Frank's reading all these off, just remember whatever color it is, it's going to have, in addition to its casting cost, sacrifice a non-token creature of the pertaining color, so white for white, and then you can cast it for free instead, which is really cool. So I'll let you go with the first one.
Flare of Denial. 1 blue. You may sacrifice a non-token blue creature rather than pay this spell's mana cost. Counter target spell.
Wow.
Yeah. So of these, I'm thinking that to me of this cycle, I'm thinking like out of the gate, what is just going to be crazy? And I think the blue one and the green one are both like going to be nuts.
Sure.
Because I think that Flare of Denial is all like, right, if you're trying to make merfolk, like move into S tier. Like we're going to talk about another merfolk later that just got printed that's already nuts, but then you have Flare of Denial like being played in that deck, like ugh.
Yeah, Flare of Denial is nasty. So I saw, actually it was so funny. So Burton Cini, I'm friends with him on Facebook. For those who know who he is, it doesn't matter. It's whatever. He's a poker player now. But anyways, he posts some really funny memes on Facebook, and he still keeps up with Magic because of his vintage cube. He posted that card when it came out. He's like, Flare of Denial. He's like, wow, this card is crazy. And then in the comments, some of the people were commenting that it was just basically Abjure. And if you don't know what Abjure is, I believe it's a enchantment from like the olden days where you can sacrifice a creature. Can you look up what Abjure is actually really quick? Because I'm going to butcher the wording. And
you're going to have to help me spell it.
Abjure MTG. I forgot the exact wording. If you could read it off for us really quick.
Abjure. As an additional cost to cast a spell, sacrifice a blue permanent.
That's what it was.
Counter target spell.
Yeah. So it's like is it a 1-drop? I can't remember.
1-drop.
Yeah. So it's a 1-drop. You got to sack a blue permanent to counter a spell, but you must sacrifice a blue permanent to do the effect. And you're never sacking a land because your lands are colorless by the fact that they're lands. So when people were commenting that, he literally said, it was so funny. It was like, those that are comparing Flare of Denial to Abjure should abjure their right to vote. I was like, that's so funny, bro. Like very toxic, but hilarious. Anyways, the reason why it's not comparable is because Flare of Denial is a cancel at the end of the day. And for those that have already played with Force of Negation, you have seen that there are numerous times, at least half the time, you're casting that card for the mana value. And you're super happy because you get to be plus a card. You don't have to pitch a card to it. And you're extremely happy. The fact that you have the option to play this as a cancel, and then it still lets you do the cheaty thing early game because your opponent's doing some crazy thing, and you're like, well, sack my worst merfolk, or sack my Snapcaster Mage, or sack my Vendilion Click, or whatever creature I just flashed in because I needed to find an answer or something. The card is phenomenal. It's really cool. Notably with Snapcaster, though, you can't like use its ability from the graveyard to cast it for free. It doesn't work that way. But Snapcaster is still a blue creature. You can sacrifice what if you have one in your hand. So like Snap, cast a spell from my graveyard, protect that graveyard spell with my Flare of Denial in hand. That's kind of like a gameplay pattern you could see. So it'd be cool to see Snapcaster Mage get played again. In general, though, like you said, I think Flare of Denial is the big one. The rest of them are good, but in ways that are a lot more fair. So the next one, you're going to talk about Flare of Cultivation, which is the green one.
Yeah, 1 green. You may sacrifice a non-token green creature rather than pay the spell's mana cost. Search your library for up to 2 basic land cards. Reveal those cards. Put one onto the battlefield tapped and the other into your hand, then shuffle. This just feels so bonkers to me.
Yeah, Commander players rejoice. This is literally just Cultivate, which is where they got the name from. Or Kadama's Reach for the old school players. But this card is very cool. I love that you're gonna like see this get played in like probably Titan, maybe if they start playing some basic lands. But the fact that you're like, you could go turn one Arboreal Grazer, ramp a land, sack my Arboreal Grazer to this, and just go ham and have so much mana in play. Makes me really happy that they finally gave us that Null Elemental Blast.
Right. I mean, that was my first thought when I read this card, is that you were talking about just in the shop.
Yeah.
About how Arboreal Grazer was going up in different decks.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh, well, if you can go 3 mana on turn 1 and then have 1 in hand to guarantee
4 on 2.
4 on 2, that just sounds absolutely wild to me. And then on top of it, if you're not doing that, also think about Yawgmoth. Like Yawgmoth going Young Wolf into another land, and then I've got a third. Like that.
Now they can combo like on turn 2.
Right. Combo could just come faster.
I guess combo on turn 3, but yeah, realistically. But yeah, it's like, okay, what do we need? More mana. Why not? It's such a good card. Agreed. It's very phenomenal. And yeah, I mean, the card itself is just really nasty. And if you just cast it as a Cultivate, it's still just gonna be a Cultivate. That card is gonna be like expensive because Commander players are gonna want it. If you needed to make a cut for Cultivate, it's literally just a strict upgrade. I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, sure, it's 1 extra green pip, but it's really not that hard, even in a 5-color deck. Let's be real.
Yeah.
The next one is the white one, Flayer of Fortitude.
2 white instant. You may sacrifice a non-token white creature rather than pay the spell's mana cost. Until end of turn, your life total can't change, and permanents you control gain hexproof and indestructible.
So unlike the other white ones, this one's actually good. Like, it's very good. The fact that you kind of get like a baby angel's grace, like, it's not saying you can't lose the game, but the fact that your life total can't change and you're protecting all your guys, hexproof and indestructible on your creatures is kind of a big deal. And usually you get that effect in green, not white, which is really nice. And now cards like this could, like we talked about, facilitate these creature aggro decks where like, I can't very easily put a Boros Charm and cast protection on my creatures or indestructible on my creatures in Modern, but I can very easily be playing humans and go like sack my Draven Inspector or whatever. All my guys are alive now, and even like for like as like attack against like burn decks where like burn probably got a lot better, which we might talk about later if we have time. Burn got a lot better with this one specific card that's coming out later. And if burn is like a really prevalent deck, the fact that you can like, in response to one of their burn spells for a turn, be like, hey, you're not changing my life total. And then they have to respond to this with like a couple bolts if they wanted to get some chip damage in. Negating some burn effects could be a pretty powerful effect.
Well, and like, think about it. If you're playing against burn, and you're siding in a Leyline of Sanctity.
Yes.
And you draw it.
Right.
That card is no longer dead if you're playing something like that. I'm sorry. I'm thinking that you can pitch. I'm thinking that you could pitch.
No, I was going to say like, you're good.
There is the 4 hours of sleep, ladies.
Don't worry, he can pitch it to Force of Virtue in his Boros Convoke deck. But yeah, I know. I really like this card. I think in general, it's like we said, it's a fair ability. It's nothing crazy, but it is a good effect. This could get played in certain decks that want that effect, or you could maybe even build around this kind of effect and protect your creatures. And I think the creature protection might get more play for like a deck you're building around as a result, and like the other part, not changing your life total, might get incidentally played, or maybe there's some like weird quirky combo you can do with like how they used to do Madcap Experiment with Platinum Empyrean and stuff like that.
Sure.
But yeah, it's really cool. The next one is the black one, Flayer of Malice. By the way, these have such cool names.
2 black. You may sacrifice a non-token black creature rather than pay that spell's mana cost. I hope you've understood that part of the mechanic of all these cards at this point. Each opponent sacrifices a creature or planeswalker with the greatest mana value among creatures and planeswalkers they control.
Yeah, so Sacrifice the greatest creature or oh yeah, it's just a kill spell. It's like when you play Niftalite and you're playing Consume, I believe it's called. Or is it Consume Consecrate?
Yes.
And you're like, sack your best guy. This is like, cool, sack your best guy. I just griefed you. Sack your best guy. I'm sacrificing what? Like, what's a really good like 1 mana black creature you can just pitch to this guy? I should have thought about it more, but I guess I was just anything for the sacrifice a creature for black. I was like, ooh, grief.
Yeah, well, my thought for this card specifically is like, what decks does this really, really punish?
Mhm.
If you're playing into either, like Reanimate with like
Ooh.
Gorios, or you're playing into Creativity where they're like Archon and you're going to sack your creature and you go, okay, I'm going to instead Flare of Malice, sack my dude that I was going to have to sacrifice anyway.
Yeah.
And I get your Archon is like, that's a big swing.
Yes.
And so at minimum for like red, black, oh my gosh, I almost said red, black Evoke.
Well, I mean, it's still a deck with grief, but
right. But
Evoke, it's called Scam.
I know. That's why I was like making the joke.
Yeah, no, you're good.
But if you have the ability to be like, oh, I'll just like sack my Dothy or
Orcish Bowmaster.
Yeah, Orcish Bowmaster, or I'm gonna sack my grief to not let you get this card that's gonna like get you close to winning the game or stabilizing. Yeah, I'm gonna do this for sure.
And if Tiny Bones ever gets played, I'm sacking him to this for sure. Like, that's so cool.
Bones.
Yeah, this one is sweet. And then the last one, which one did we not talk about?
The red one.
Flayer of Duplication. For the first time ever, the red whatever spell doesn't just completely suck. Like, thank you, God.
1 red instant. Sacrifice a non-token red creature rather than pay the spell's mana cost. Copy target instant or sorcery spell. You may choose new targets for that copy.
Yeah, so it's like not quite a Wild Ricochet. It's like half a Wild Ricochet, or it's like a Reiterate, if you will. It's really cool. I think this card is sweet. This is going to help you win counter magic wars, incidentally, with like red creatures. And you can just use it as like even an additional burn if you really needed to.
Oh yeah, you're playing some Murktide and you go swing with Ragavan. Okay, bolt you this, sack my Ragavan, bolt you again.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Or like if you played and burn for whatever reason and they just come up the board, now you can use your guys to pay for this for free or whatever. And then if you even just pay it for its mana cost, like fighting counter wars with this card is going to be something that people sleep on, because even like back in the day when I used to play Scred like 10 years ago, Scred, we would play this card that was like, if it targets a blue spell, it's a 1-drop, and you can like change, you can like redirect. It was a misdirection, but for red, and you like change the target of a spell. This is kind of like basically doing the same thing. If you cast a counter spell and I don't want it to happen, I sack my Ragavan or my DRC or whatever, and then I copy your counter spell just to counter yours. GG. It seems pretty good, and in this color specifically, I'm really happy. I think you can abuse it in aggro. I think you could use it just as well in a mid-range like a DRC Murktide deck. And I think even like for Commander, this is just a really sweet card. I'm super happy with the whole cycle. I think all these cards could get played in Modern. Even if they don't, they're still like interesting cards. You're not like gonna pull it and be like, oh no, I got a Force of Despair. Why did I pay $10 for this pack?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
Like, it's such a big deal that these are all good because it's the rare cycle. So now you have these 5 to pull from, you have the 5 fetch lands to pull from. These packs have to be good because they are expensive. $10 per pack. You better be good packs. You
better
know what
be
I mean?
good packs. Yep. We're not gonna have dude, what's the one we always talk about? The Dominator Remastered.
Oh yeah. No,
don't do it to me.
Oh my god, just a terrible set, man. As we're getting Innistrad Remastered supposedly later, so we'll see. Maybe that better be good. Ravnica Remastered was not that bad.
All right.
The next card we're gonna get into, it's gonna be just a quick touch. Power Balance. Callback to Counterbalance. Counterbalance was actually good though, and it got top banned. Power Balance lets you cast your cards for free. I'll let Frank read it really quick.
Power Balance. 2 red. Enchantment. Whenever an opponent casts a spell, you may reveal the top card of your library. If you do, you may cast that card without paying its mana cost if 2 spells have the same mana value.
Yeah, so like it's a cool card. I love the callback to counterbalance, but this is like I don't know. I'll maybe somebody will build around it. We are running pretty low on time though, so I might skip a couple of
It's
these.
time to hit the highlights.
Yeah. So I'm gonna start doing these in bulk. 6 as a callback to Renin 6 is such a cool card. We'll see if this card gets played. Not gonna read it off. Volatile Storm Drake. This one is really cool. It's a callback to Gilded Drake, although it's got much better wording where you don't have to worry about like did my guy lose target or did he gain protection? It would have been cooler if this card was I guess it needs a lot of energy to steal something relevant, but at least it has like protection from activated and triggered abilities. So like if you steal an Omnath with it, which is most likely going to be its best target, they can't leyline binding it in response. That's kind of interesting, I suppose.
And speaking of that, just to like stop for a moment, is that there are so many cards within this set that are touching back on energy again. It's just really making me hope that like energy is going to find its home in Constructed.
Yeah. Well, I think enough of these cards individually are powerful enough where the energy mechanic will matter, but the card itself is going to be carrying it for the deck. We'll get into more of those as we talk about the next card, which I think for the now, because we're running low on time, we're going to stop reading them off. Todd's going to put them on camera for you guys. If you're listening in the car, we apologize, but we're really low on time. The next powerful card is Wheel of Potential. Calls back to Wheel of Fortune, which is really cool. It's notable for this card that the ability is a May ability and the cards go to exile. So with Wheel of Fortune in the past, you're like, fill up my graveyard, draw a bunch of cards, force you to discard your hand. So now you can't keep your game plan that you might have already tutored for. This is a May ability for both players. So if you don't want to discard, you don't have to. And if the player that casts the card uses 7 or more energy, then they get to use the exiled cards as if it were like Escape to the Wilds or something like that, which is really, really cool. I think the card itself is really awesome, and calling back to Wheel of Fortune in a cool way because it's a reserve list card is it's really sick how they did this card justice. The next 2 cards I'm going to talk about are Guide of Souls and Primal Prayers. The reason why I'm talking about these together are because they are getting really, really talked about as a potential combo in Modern already. And there's a short that we posted up on the Boarhat YouTube channel if you want to see where I talked about how this combo works. With that being said, Primal Prayers calls back to Allurin. It is literally a more balanced Allurin where it's a 4-mana enchantment and it lets you play the 3-mana creatures or less from your hand for free. However, with Allurin, it was actually free. With Primal Prayers, you must use an energy and it only enters the battlefield with 2 of them. So you gotta, pick and choose your battles. However, with Guide of Souls, the new Soul Sister we got, which calls back to obviously Soul Sisters, you get a life and an energy whenever a creature enters the battlefield. So now your Primal Prayers is net neutral, go infinite. The card that you would go infinite right now with is Acer Airrock, and Recruiter of the Guard can help you tutor for that combo and just go ham. This deck will probably get played in Modern. You'll probably start seeing 5-0s with it. Everybody's been talking about it. I think it's definitely playable. Allurin was already good in Legacy. We were doing the same thing with Acer Airrock in the past there.
Going online to look up Acerac so I can
Acer Airrock, the Archlich.
So I can go buy 40 of them right now.
Too late.
No.
And then so like I think God of Souls I could talk about more. I really like Martyr Proc. I really like Sarah Ascendant. Martyr of Sands, Proclamation of Rebirth, Soul Sisters, and then the 2019-2020 era of 27 plus life matters. There's so much cool life gain that you could do. So like we talked about with the Sorin earlier, life gain, Sorin, all this stuff matters. Really just excited to see what this brews, like what kind of ideas people come up with. Even if it's like a tier 2 deck, I want to play some of these really cool archetypes. I just want to jam leagues. I don't care if I'm not like going to take this deck to a Nerd Rage tournament. If I can jam a league with like Soul Sisters again, that'd be so much fun. And honestly, I would play tier 2 decks at tournaments. I don't care. As long as I'm having a good time, I would totally do it. With that being said, the next card we're going to talk about is Harbinger of the Seas, which Frank kind of foreshadowed earlier. It's a callback to Blood Moon. Merfolk players rise up. This says non-basic lands are islands, and it's a 2/2 Merfolk, I believe.
Yeah, it's a 2/2 Merfolk, 1 blue.
Basic. Disgusting. I don't know if they were happy. I think I think this card is sweet. I don't know if it's like broken, but the fact that it's like islands, so now you're a Master of the Pearl Triton, your Lord of Atlantis is especially good. You don't have to play Spreading Seas if you don't want to. So now then you can just play the Tide Shapers and then this guy, punishing them for having islands. This itself, if the ability ever becomes not good, you can just sack it to Flare of Denial. And it is a merfolk, so it's getting all the buffs from the Master of the Pearl Triton and the Lord of Atlantis. Helps your Sylveon get protection. It's just a cool card. And the fact that it's like a Blood Moon that can get Ward 1 because of Sylveon is just crazy. Would love to talk more about it, but like we said, guys, we're going to just rapid fire these. The next one is Strix Serenade. This calls back to Swan Song. The interesting thing about this card is that it actually counters the 3 spells that Swan Song does not including battles. But Swan Song hits instant.
No one cares about battles.
Nobody cares about battles. Yeah, true. I believe Swan Song is instant sorcery or enchantment. And this one is artifact, planeswalker, creature, which is kind of cool. I don't know if that makes it better or worse. Probably worse, but it's still a cool card. The next one, and just interrupt me if you ever want to jump in, is Lelia the Blade Reforged. This was originally from Commander 21, I believe. And when this card came out, I actually immediately jumped into Legacy. It gets played in like Mono Red Prisons deck. I'd love to see like a Red Prison, Ugin's Labyrinth, Chalice on 1, Blood Moon deck punish people in Modern. That'd be so cool. I think it would be sweet. And she could fit into that kind of shell pretty easily. The next one is a really cool card. It calls back to Recurring Nightmare. This is Chthonian Nightmare. Sick name, by the way. It's Recurring Nightmare, for those who know, is banned in Commander. It's a enchantment that says when you play it, in play, you can sacrifice a creature to bounce your Recurring Nightmare and reanimate a creature. Really cool card. There's so many ways to abuse it. Chthonian Nightmare does the same thing, however, you have to pay energy. So you pay energy for the mana value of the guy you're reanimating, but you bounce back your Chthonian Nightmare. So then when you play it again, you get some more energy, and I think it makes 3 energy when it comes in. So the card itself, very cool. I definitely think there's a home for that. I was talking actually with Will Kowalczyk. We were talking about how we think the card is really good, and like he's already making brews for the deck. Theoretically, you could even play it in a deck like Yawgmoth. There's just so many ways you could abuse this card. It's definitely a build-around card, but it's one of those where you're like, oh, I hope energy is good. It's like, well, boom, this is an energy card that you're going to want to build around.
Yeah.
The next card, very high impact, Kappa Cannoneer. So this is originally from Commander Neon Dynasty, I believe, in one of the Commander precons. This is a sick addition to the format. I know Sal, if you're watching, shout out to Sal from MTG Chicago. He is simping super hard. That guy loves Affinity. Super big fan of Affinity. All the Affinity players are rejoicing. I'm telling you guys, like the decks that were like struggling, they are eating. It's so nice now. But with that being said, Kappa Cannoneer is a big impact for the Affinity decks, like 8-cast, where you have Thought Monitor and other Affinity creatures like Mirror Enforcer or whatever the better version of it was. I forgot the name. But now you have Simulacrum Synthesizer from the Big Score, and you could probably see some of these decks get played in Modern in Urza Saga. Simulacrum Synthesizer, 4 Thought Monitors, Kappa Cannoneer, which gets I think improvised, so it's like super cheap to cast, and it has Ward 4. So you have like these huge artifacts that you can catch for like 1 mana and just pump a ton of Orange Structs into play and just like one-shot your opponent. There's gonna be so many different ways to build Affinity now. It is gonna be interesting to see which one is like the top dog. The next card is Kirik, Son of Yawgmoth, another one from Commander 2019, and it's actually a pretty scary addition to the format. I know it seems kind of innocuous right now because it's like a 4-mana creature if you pay the Phyrexian and chunk yourself for 6. But making all your black spells free, and the fact that this combos with Extort, like we talked about, if there is a lifelink, life gain matters Orzhov deck, this is going to fit in perfectly where now the life loss isn't really hurting you. It really works well with that new Sorin, and Cabal Coffer's decks might even just play this just to like abuse it as well. I think the card is really cool. It's already been really fun to play in Commander, and I'm excited to see what it brings to the format. The next card is Orum's Chant. Originally from Planeschiff, as a former Death and Taxes player, really love this card. I used to play it a lot because as an Elves player in Legacy in the past, Elves destroys Death and Taxes. It's like not a close matchup. And this was actually one of the hate cards from the sideboard that would help you beat Elves because Orum's Chant is effectively a silence with an upgrade. Its kicker is that your opponents can't attack you if you pay 2 mana instead of just 1. So silence got an upgrade. You can use it against Archon decks or whatever. You can silence people if you want now. But in addition to having the silence, now you have a way to maybe turn off their attack for a turn as well. And that might just save you from lethal and then let you draw out of the problem that you're in. I think the card is really cool. I think that for modern context, it's definitely a card that like belongs in modern. So it's really cool that we have it now.
Stop.
Pause.
I have a card I want to talk about.
Okay.
So one card that I didn't see on your list, but it is a card worth mentioning because I've seen so much like people posting about it. The Amped Raptor.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So 2 mana, 1 red, dinosaur, first strike. When Amped Raptor enters the battlefield, you get 2 energy. Then if you cast it from your hand, exile cards from the top of your library until you exile a non-land card. You may cast that card by paying any amount of energy equal to its mana value rather than paying its mana
People
cost.
have been talking about
So
this.
I've been seeing like different like loops or for like burn or for so many different things where like, oh, you can then just use the energy to start casting some cards for free.
Yeah.
And like if you're playing low mana costing cards, like this card is just
Yeah, it's definitely a high value card. I don't know why I left it off my list. I must have just like been going too fast, but
and it's
card
an
is very cool.
uncommon. So like there'll be a ton of these for you to get, and hopefully it's not. Hopefully like this is a sweet card for modern that is like way cheaper than the rest because it's an uncommon.
For sure. That's true. Next card on my list, Toxic Deluge. Originally from Commander 2013. I love this card. It was like the first precon I ever bought, the Nekusar deck. This card, as soon as it came out, along with Trinity Nemesis, was which I'm surprised we didn't get Trinity Nemesis for the Merfolk players. That is so sad. But anyways, they gave us Toxic Deluge at least. That card immediately went to Legacy as soon as it came out. Toxic Deluge is a nasty card. For those that don't know, it's a black and 2, 3 mana sorcery. Pay any amount of life you want. All creatures get minus XX, where X is what you paid in life. That's like, this card has probably taken the most life from people that you pay into of all cards in the entire game. And no card ever has given you back more value pound for pound ever. It's just not close. This card is where you want to put your life because it just kills everything. It's minus XX. It kills indestructible creatures. I mean, like somebody slams an Ululog, you're like, yes, I pay 10 life, brother. Get out of here. Like, no problem. The card is so disgusting. And if, like we talked about, if you play a life gain deck, like Orzhov spell, then you can even pay as much life as you want. You don't even care. But the card itself, it's going to go in like every black deck. It's so freaking good. Even Death Shadow players might play this because now paying the life just grows their shadow and it won't kill it. They'll never kill their own shadow.
That's awesome.
It's really, really gross.
Can you imagine the swing against like a living end opponent?
Yeah,
like their
right.
biggest thing is a 7/7 and you're playing Shadow and you're like, cool, I'm going to lose
Yeah.
all this life and my thing's going to live and all your stuff is dead.
Yeah, and that specifically, that's such a good point because like you go turn 3 Shardless Agent, boom, and they're like, well, how do I get out of that? Oh, land Toxic Deluge. I'll pay 8. You know?
Yeah, 8,
Boom.
your whole board's
Your whole
gone,
board's gone.
and now my Death Shadow is massive.
Exactly. And it's not going to get in for that much that turn, but the next turn there's the Teamer Battle Rage. The next card is Sabine's Reclamation, another 2019 card from Commander. This is another cool card that can get played like in a Martyr Proc-ish type shell. It gets played in Legacy and really grindy decks. It's a staple in the Vintage Cube. Sabine's Reclamation is just a super grindy card where like you get back my Teferi, you get back my whatever, and then it has flashbacks, so you're doing it twice. It just really helps you in these grindy matchups. I can definitely see this card getting played. The next card I want to talk about, Elves players, shout outs. Priest of Titania, originally from Urza's Saga. Great addition to the format for Elves, especially with the next card I'm going to talk about. Priest of Titania is a 2-mana creature that says make it green for every elf in play. And we talked about the other elf we got earlier, Eladamri. The next card that came out on my list is Wirewood Symbiote. Originally from Scourge, this is the best elf support tech ever. And it's a bug. It's not even an elf. But it's a 1-mana green creature. It says you can bounce your elves to untap a creature. And because you return an elf to your hand, it protects your combo pieces from removal spells. You can do it in response to it. It's only once per turn, but you can do it on your turn, and then you can do it on your opponent's turn. Protect your guys from field nukes, protect them from Toxic Deluge, and then the fact that it untaps creatures, there's where your combo comes from. You're like, oh, bounce Elvish Visionary. I want to use them to draw cards. untap my Priest of Titania, tap her again for however much mana, cast the same Elvish Visionary, draw cards, start going ham, and then maybe I have enough untapped guys, I will summon a Crater Hoof. So I think that this is going to be pretty sweet to see. I hope that elves are playable again, at least tier 2. Please, for me. Just I want to see some elves. The next card is actually pretty interesting. I'm not sure how I feel about it, but one of our new patrons, Jared, and a good friend of mine, actually played a team event with him. If you guys remember from the last episode, he thinks this is the most powerful. I think that was the phrase he said. This is the most powerful 2-drop creature in the game right now. Is Psychic Frog. This is like a callback to Psychotog, and it's like the 2020 version of what that card would look like now, because Psychotog back in the day was awesome, but now it's kind of weak, and Psychic Frog definitely is a much more powerful version of what that would look like. I'm just not sure what the shell for it looks like yet, but I'm sure it's like a build around blue-black counter spells plus removal spells, only when Khan is Psychotog or something. Maybe it's a Grixis Ragavan deck too, who knows. I'm almost done with my list here. The next card is White of the Reliquary. Not white, it's white like a zombie. This is literally White of Precinct 6 and Knight of the Reliquary had a beautiful child, and it's
Look
gorgeous.
at my baby.
Yeah,
You're
it's
beautiful.
so precious zombie child with no, with like decaying skin. But this card is nasty. The fact that you can sack your creatures to ramp for lands, and its power and toughness are equal to how many creatures you have in the graveyard. We already talked about all these synergies where you want to sacrifice your creatures, and this is another way to ramp out lands. If we ever get like a lands matter deck, like Legacy has Dark Depths and stuff like that, this card is going to be a huge like boon for that. Especially because I think we also got like Elvish Reclaimer, whatever his name is, where you can like sacrifice a land to give a creature shroud or something. I can't remember the exact wording, but it's not on my list. Next card, Null Drifter. This obviously is a callback to Mull Drifter, which is a 5-mana flying creature that draws you 2 cards when it comes in, but it has Evoke for blue and 2. And Null Drifter also has Evoke for blue and 2, and it draws you 2 cards when it enters the battlefield. However, if you ephemerate a Null Drifter against me in my store, you're banned.
Banned.
But
Bye-bye.
Get out. This card is nasty. It's a Null Drifter that draws you cards, and if you ever like flicker it with Ephemerate or those type of effects, it has Annihilator 1 and it's a flyer. So like this card I think is gross. I think there's definitely going to be homes for cards like this. We'll see what happens. Although I've heard like murmurs that like Flicker decks and Soul Herder type decks are making a comeback as well, which would kind of be cool, because I know you used to play a deck like that with Coco and Aether Channeler and stuff like that. I miss Coco, man. The next card, where was this card for me like 10 years ago? Null Elemental Blast. Colorless 1-drop. But it must be colorless. It's a callback obviously to the Elemental Blast spells, red or blue. And excuse me, it is a colorless version, and it hates on colored things, which is really cool. So if your spell is multicolored, it can counter it or destroy it. Very, very cool card. It would definitely be cool to see a card like this when Yorion was legal and 4-color was like the best deck, pop an Omnath or whatever. But I think there's a lot more individual multicolored spells now that might be better off for a card like this in general. I mean, could you imagine if this was legal for Pioneer with your Nymphtalite deck? You're like, wow, my whole deck is 1-drop. Well, the next card is Winter Moon. This is another baby. Winter Orb and Blood Moon had a beautiful child. We love that for them. And I can't wait to see all these prison decks start punishing the Leyline Binding players, because
Happy
I'm tired
for
of
the
that card. Happy Mother's Day. Father's Day is coming up right around the corner too. Good for you, Blood Moon. Phyrexian Tower is the last card on my list, originally from Urza Saga. This, I can't wait to make 2 mana after griefing your ass. So, GG.
GG, no
There's definitely more cards I could talk about, and there's definitely way more I could go into, but we're so low on time, and Frank's got to get some sleep. That's pretty much all the cards I had that I wanted to talk about, at least touching on. And if you guys have more questions, hit me up in the Discord. I definitely want to talk Modern right now. And if you want to see our show notes, we'll post them up on the Patreon when we get a chance. And that way anybody who's subscribed to the Patreon can see our show notes and then review whatever we were wanting to talk about.
Yeah, have mercy on me, because I'm a EPCP boy. Okay.
He's
So I'm gonna just quickly very quickly for pre-release because we're not having like a pre-release prep like we normally do. So I'm just going to be like, hey, these are some general heuristics for Modern Horizons 3 that you should think about for this weekend, because though we talked about a lot of really sweet cards today, a lot of them matter in constructed and like do not matter that much in limited.
True.
Like some of them are really busted for limited and they're going to be great. They're busted in both.
You get an Eldrazi Titan and you have the mana, you win. Sure.
Right. Yeah, like good for you. But specifically for like limited, I just wanted to like give us some talking points. So one thing is that of like the creatures, the majority, like 75% of the creatures in this set have 3 power or less. It's literally 25%, 25%, 25%. And a lot of the removal is not like, oh, this hits some things. Like it's conditional where it's like, oh, this is -1/-1, so it only hits this much. The majority of the removal in the set is like, it just catches all.
Sure.
It's just like destroy target creature.
That makes sense for the power level.
Yeah, a lot of stuff like that is roaming around. So know that going in that like your removal will just generally be good.
If you see value cards like the Primal Prayers and Chthonian Nightmare, these are the rares you want to build around. Chthonian Nightmare, the fact that it bounces itself back and you can like loop your creatures, those are the kind of cards you would actually build around as a rare. Primal Prayer is the same thing. It's like casting these guys for free. Now we're talking. A Eldrazi spell like Ulamog being 12 mana, you might not even get to 12 mana. So like, you know, these are the big differences in the mythic power level.
Right. And one thing to like understand with that is that what I've been hearing about people that have been doing a lot of like practice drafts, obviously no one is playing with the cards because that hasn't happened yet. But in practice drafts, they're like, oh, I had a pack with 3 rares and they're all garbage. So like know that like in this limited format, that will happen. So
it's just like the Underjunction. Uncommons are king.
Yeah. It's like for this set specifically and the master sets in general, it's not about like, oh my gosh, I have all these bombs that are just going to like absolutely win the game. It's that there are with energy and with graveyard and with whatever, it's synergy based.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of cards that do a lot of little things that when they're together really rock. Those are the decks that you're going to be building in this format.
But the archetypes are really cool. When you get the build around me energy or the build around me graveyard matters or the build around me soul sister deck, it's like these are some cool deck archetypes you're going to get to play.
And with that in mind, the archetypes are within the Abzan color pairs, it's all about modified creatures. So there's bestow, we have when stuff dies, we have modified, we have adapt. All of those things, like in that color trio, they care about modified stuff. Within Jeskai, it's energy. There is like red, white aggro energy. There is blue, white flyers with energy. And then there is blue, red mid range with energy.
Yeah, find your commander upgrades.
Teamer is Eldrazi. Blue black is control, and it's drawing 3 cards and stuff mattering. It's pretty simple. When you draw 3 cards, you get payoffs.
Yeah.
And then there's red black artifacts. The only like caveat with that is that there are only like 18, and so if you don't have enough like critical mass of those cards, your deck is not going to function.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's like my general heuristics for the format is just like, hey, you're looking for synergy within the set, build it, and just, you know, play cards that are like good by themselves. Like the energy cards that are good by themselves, like the energy cards that are good by themselves, like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna draw 2 cards and get 2 energy.
Yeah.
Like that card in any deck is awesome for blue. But you know, some of the other energy cards, like, oh, well, like there's a lot of stuff that makes energy the first time, and then it automatically uses energy, or you have things to do with that energy immediately. But there's nothing within this set that's like, there are 2 cards that continually generate energy for you. And so it's like, you're not going to have an engine where you're like, oh, I'm never going to run out of energy, so I can just keep churning through stuff. It doesn't exist. There are 2 cards that do that. So
Yeah, and unlike Kaladesh, there's no like Wood Weaver's Puzzle Knots. There's no like, oh, I'm getting 3 or 4 energy off of this card, and it only makes energy. It's
Yeah.
like you get 1 or 2, maybe 3 on an inexpensive spell. That's why like the Primal Prayers I don't hate, because you get 2 energy. So you're gonna get for 4 mana, you get to play 2 3-drops for free. That's not bad if you have more guys making you energy that you might not want to use their ability for. If you're chunking out 3-drops, you know, but you have to really think about you're building around that, as opposed to Chthonian Nightmare. Every time you use the ability, you're getting Chthonian Nightmare back. So if you can find a way to net mana by playing these 2 or 1 drops that you're recurring, and you have any kind of like, I don't think there's like a reassembling skeleton in the set, but if you have guys that you're happy to die, then it kind of makes Chthonian Nightmare that much better, where you're like, oh, I ramped up a bit of energy, I'm going to revive this 5 mana guy, bounce my Chthonian Nightmare, sack a 1-drop guy or a 2-drop guy, whatever, and that could just huge impact change your game.
Yeah. So if you have cards that like do a thing, whether that be modified or energy or whatever, you're going to be looking for them in your common slot. Like what I've been hearing content creators say is like, oh my gosh, I just like the commons are what I'm most excited about in this set. So look at your commons and like look what they're doing, and then that should kind of tell you like, oh, I've got X amount of commons that are doing sacrifice or artifacts, or because even like the artifacts, there's no good colorless one. Weirdly, like there's not a lot of great colorless payoffs. That's why like the red black stuff
the
is like
guy, though, if you're doing energy, the red blue energy maker card, that card is nasty. But yeah, no, I definitely agree with Frank for sure. And for the context of pre-release, definitely look to your comments before you start building. What are the good stuff I have? Build. When you're drafting, it's definitely different. You're like, oh, I can like start picking and choosing. But for pre-release specifically, sealed, yeah, you gotta look at your comments and uncommons. And then maybe there's like 1 or 2 rares that are like worth building around, but I don't see it off of the first look. But obviously, I was looking mostly for constructed, and this is a set that, let's be real, is designed mostly for constructed.
Right. So like if you get like another Goyf, and you know,
if you get Necro Dominance, by the way, build around that. You win.
Yeah, and you know, like Al Damri's or Victol. I don't even know why I wanted to say that card a second time. But like if you get cards like that, it's like those cards, neither of those are gonna be like, oh my gosh, because I got this, I'm gonna win the game.
Yeah.
It's like
Nether Gripe is fine in a black deck, but like Eladamri, like you almost don't even want to play it because it's hard to cast. Yeah. And you're probably not gonna get any payout. Well, unless you play any creature at the top of your deck, so it's kind of like a Fibble tip.
Yeah. So it's more of like, if your rare is like, oh my gosh, if this sticks, I'm going to win the game, great. That can be in your deck. But what your commons and uncommons are doing is what you're going to build around. Right. That's going to be like, oh, now I can include this rare in my deck because it's just like a decent card. Because most of these, like you get a Flare of Denial, you're like, sweet, I got some money.
Yeah, exactly.
But this card's probably...
You draft that.
Yeah, like it'll fit in my deck, but is it like really good?
Cancel is almost never good in draft, but hey, you know what? The power level is higher, so maybe the cancel level will counter a higher power level spell. I guess with that all being said, unless you have more notes, we can jump into our shoutouts.
Shoutouts.
All right, shoutouts, Borsat Gaming. Once again, guys, if you want to order your Modern Horizons 3, please support the store. We really appreciate it. Shoutouts to Todd for doing the free editing he always does for us. It really, really helps us out. It's a lot of work. You guys don't understand how much editing time goes into this. And shout outs to MTG Chicago, our buddy Sal, letting us use the cameras. The camera we're using to record right now, the cameras we use to record all our weekly play. You might have seen some of our RCQ videos on the Boarhat YouTube channel as well. I got a lot of views there. Frank was actually in the final, so he was in a couple of those videos. And all of our weekly gameplay goes to MTG Chicago, so Sal's channel is just always popping off with a ton of gameplay videos. I actually just pulled a link up recently to one of the videos where I was playing against our buddy Chris, who comboed me out with Phyrexian Hulking Metamorph. And Rectus joins up, and we made a short about that that'll go up on our channel in a little bit, maybe in a day or two. So that'll be pretty cool. And if you want to check out Nancy Steroids intro and outro music, and also does the music when Frank is streaming, his music's great. He's always putting out new content. Supposedly, he said that you guys actually check his stuff out because his numbers go up whenever we drop a video. So we really appreciate that you guys are actually checking it out. I think the music's really good. For those that are into that style of music, it's phenomenal. Anybody I'm missing on the list? Besides the patrons, shout out to our patrons. We love you guys.
Yeah.
And all the viewers that are just with us for the ride. Really, really grateful for you guys. If you want to hit the subscribe button, hook it up.
Yeah, that's it. Next, you'll be expecting to hear from us a little bit about like some of our tournament reports and like what is new to Modern in the early days of MH3. And then before you know it, Bloomborough is coming out August 2nd, which means that like we've probably got one more episode before spoiler season and prep for that one.
Yeah, I got an RCQ this weekend I got to run, so Frank's going to be playing in that, and we'll let you know how he did. Hopefully he got his bridesmaids dress ready.
No, please.
Anyways, thanks a bunch, guys. We really appreciate you guys tuning in. Hopefully it wasn't distracting that I was holding the mic the whole time. My hand's starting to hurt now, and let's hope the sound is okay because we've never done this before. Catch you guys next time.
Have a good one.